Welcome back, everyone, to the Burn the Talking Points podcast / vidcast here. Our first guest ever, the new DNC Chair, Ken Martin. If you're watching this on Thursday, we are talking to him literally 12 hours after he was elected. So this is fresh. The takes are right away. So first, Ken, thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and honored to speak with you.
Just what are you feeling right? You're now the head of the Democratic Party. There's no president in the White House that's a Democrat. Like, you're the top. Like, what are you feeling?
Well, first off, I feel an immense honor to be able to lead our party at this time. It's so critical right now, right? And part of my challenge, and I think all of us as Democrats, is to get people back into this fight, right? To dust themselves off, to get back in the fight and realize that we have to use time to our advantage right now. We don't have time to waste. These last 2 weeks since Donald Trump was inaugurated certainly have laid out the stakes of this election, right, for the American people. He's already failing the American people, and we need to be able to get back out there and show folks what we're fighting for at the same time of resisting the extremes of this new administration.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue. I want to talk about what he's been saying and then kind of what we've been saying.
Of course.
So he's been saying he has a mandate. He landslide. He crushed it, biggest ever. Those types of things. I mean, you look at the data, and it's not the case. It's
That's right.
An incredibly close election. But then on the other side, people are saying we need to communicate more. We need to tell people about the stakes. Like, can you talk a little bit about how you're viewing kind of how Trump is selling it versus how we're responding?
Yeah, well, first off, to your point about the election itself, 114,000 votes swing in 3 battleground states, and we'd be celebrating President Harris right now, right? A 7,000 vote swing in 3 battleground congressional seats, and we'd have Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. So it was a very close election. It was not a mandate. It was not a landslide, but it still felt like it, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember in those final few weeks, people were so excited and enthusiastic. Folks, even myself, I'm generally a pessimist about elections, right, started to really believe that we were going to win. And part of it was because we saw a record amount of contributions, record amount of volunteerism. We were, I was in Philadelphia a week before the election. We were knocking 4,000 doors a minute, 1 million doors a day.
I mean, we saw 30,000 volunteers come into the Maryland Democratic Party alone
that's
from
exactly
the
right.
Harris campaign.
Right, and so, there was just a lot of enthusiasm, right, and people were really excited about the opportunity. So it still felt like a gut punch, even though it was a very close election, right? So, but this is not a burn it all down moment for the Democratic Party. There's strong infrastructure that was built over these last 8 years. We need to build upon it, but it's also not a tinker around the edges, right? And so what we need to do right now, because Donald Trump is failing the American people, he's not delivering on any of the promises he made to help improve people's lives, is to remind them of that. Part of that is definitely getting out there and throwing a punch and making sure when he's failing the American people that we remind them of that. I don't know how in the hell, for instance, changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America helps people's lives, right? I don't know how these tariffs are going to help bring down costs for people who are struggling in this country right now, right? And on inaugural day, I happen to be in Atlanta at Ebenezer Church celebrating Dr. MLK Jr. Day, and what was striking to me as I watched the video of his inauguration is right under the portrait of all of our founding fathers were 4 of the richest men in the world, and their cabinet sitting behind them. The combined wealth of that cabinet, $460 billion. Jeez. Not the top 1%, but the top 100th of 1% now control our federal government. You think they give a damn about working people? You think they give a damn about helping actually improve people's lives?
I mean, I know these tariffs aren't going to impact them.
Yeah, right. And so you now have this modern class of robber barons who are controlling our federal government, and basically they're there to help enrich themselves. I mean, this is what we're up against, right? And so when we talk about what we're fighting for, we need to remind Democrats, not just Democrats, we need to remind Americans all over this country what the stakes are right now. And so I just think we've got a real opportunity here as Democrats to get up off the mat and do something different here.
So that's a perfect kind of like encapsulation of what we're hearing from like our activists on the ground is, we want to know, like, communicate everywhere and communicate all the time. Like, how are you thinking about kind of the groundswell from the activists of like more?
Well, first thing, I campaigned on a permanent campaign. And what do I mean by that? We have to change our mindset. When I came up in politics in the 90s, right, the old conventional wisdom was that people don't start paying attention to politics until 5 months before an election, right? And undecided voters break in the last 2 weeks. That's a really antiquated belief system right now, and the Republicans understood this, right? Look, think about this. 40% of Americans say they avoid the news at all costs, yet 90% of Americans have a smartphone, which means they're getting information thrown at them all the time, right? The entertainment industry understood this years ago when they started making the switch to streaming services, right? We're now in this new information economy, right? And we did not make that shift. So starting in 2020, the Republicans started beating the shit out of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party on all these online spaces, right? Streaming services, gaming platforms, any place there was an online community, social media. We weren't anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
We started to rev up our communications infrastructure during the election year. They already had such a lead, a 3.5-year lead, and they had already defined us before we defined
It's
ourselves.
like that ecosphere that we saw of it's political adjacent. It's not just politics.
Well, that's
it's
right.
entertainment who then veered into politics versus politics who veered into
Right,
entertainment.
and it's also online communities. I mean, you got people joining online knitting groups, right? Or online, any community now is moving into those online spaces.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing, and this is the sophisticated thing they did, the Republicans hired people who were already part of those online communities, these micro-influencers, to essentially spit out their lies and their misinformation and disinformation, and we weren't anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest lessons from this last election. We can't repeat that. That means we need to communicate everywhere and to everyone. You know, people ask me, because I'm a hunter, where do you go to hunt? And they think I'm going to tell them to my, deer stand or to my favorite hunting spot. No. Do you know where we go to hunt?
No.
You go where the deer are, right? It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
We need to go where voters are. We need to meet them at the moment and where they're at and where they're getting their information. And we didn't do that as a Democratic Party, right? So that's one. The second piece of a permanent campaign is the fact that we can't show up 4 months before an election, and the first conversation we have with voters is, hey, I need you to do something for us, which is to vote for our party or our candidate. How do you build durable trust with voters if you're asking them the first time they meet you to do something for us? And then, by the way, we never show up again for 2 years, and then the only time they hear from us is when we're asking them to do something for us. You see, in Minnesota, we call this the Wellstone way of winning, which is why we have permanent year-round organizing where we don't go down with those conversations because we're building trust with communities. Why did we lose ground with, we don't know for sure, but I would surmise that one of the reasons we lost ground with so many parts of our coalition is because they believe that only thing we care about is their vote. We don't care about them or their community or their lives. And sure enough, how we campaign and sometimes how we govern proves that point. So we got to change that. If we want people to vote for us, we have to earn the right to ask for their vote, and we have to earn that right by building trust with communities. So we need a permanent campaign throughout this country.
So one more question before we break down into just the final, getting to know you a bit more as, Ken Martin, the human, and not just as DNC chair. But you, 36 hours ago, you were, Ken Martin, chair of the Minnesota DFL.
Yes.
Now you're Ken Martin, chair of the Democratic Party in opposition to Donald Trump, who's notoriously ruthless.
Yes.
Like, you're now his opposition. He knows who you are now, and you're target number one. Like,
I hope
what
he
does
does
that
now.
feel like?
Well, as I said yesterday, when someone said, what's your message to Donald Trump? I said, guess what? We're coming. And I'm taking the gloves off. And we're going to throw punches. I have nothing to lose. You see, Democrats sometimes, we take a step back. We don't want to, be as adversarial. We don't want to punch back. We don't want to fight. That's not me, right? I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, which is to stand up for people who are relying on this party right now for someone to do something. Time for Democrats to grow a spine, get in this game, stand up for our values, and fight for them unapologetically. Unapologetically. I've always viewed my job as a chair of the DFL is to take the low road so my candidates and elected officials can take the high road, right? Let's get out there and define the other side, right? Let's put them on their heels. Let's make sure that they're responding to what we're talking about, right? instead of the other way around. We're always, let me give you an example of this. Within hours in California after those wildfires started, the Republican conspiracy theory machine started pushing out this BS about the reason where there's a water shortage is because Gavin Newsom blew up a dam to help native tribes save some fish, right? Complete bullshit. But guess what? It percolated up and out to the mainstream reporters. The mainstream reporters started reporting it as fact. And what did Gavin Newsom have to do while he was trying to save LA? He had to defend himself against all of this BS. Yeah. This is how sophisticated they are. So we need a real-time war room to push back on that disinformation. We need to actually then go on the offense. I would love to put Donald Trump on his heels. I would love to put Republicans on their heels to make sure they're responding to stuff we're putting out.
That's that idea that we can no longer pretend that these online spaces or these crazy conspiracy theories won't get traction because they're designed to get traction. Right. So it's responding, attacking them before they get the traction. So let's transition quick, just a couple of rapid fire questions so people can get to know you a little bit more. You're a campaigner through and through. Best campaign you ever worked on?
Well, I would say it would probably be my first, which was for Paul Wellstone in '90, because that really
we all do better when we all do better.
Yeah, it really has instilled so much of the reason I do this work and a belief that government and politics can be a great catalyst for change. But my favorite campaign, still to this day, was '04. I ran John Kerry's campaign in Minnesota, and some of my greatest friends and colleagues to this day are people who worked with me on that campaign. So I'm sure you have memories like that too, right? But campaigns are, to all the young people watching at home, I'd encourage you to work on a campaign because there's nothing like it. So
you only get to watch one sports team forever from here on out. Which is it?
It's my alma mater, the Kansas Jayhawks, the all-time winningest college basketball program in the nation.
Don't mean to roll my eyes.
That's all right. I'm a huge sports fan, and particularly...
All right, professional sports team, one professional sports team.
Probably the Minnesota Vikings. I'm a homer. I love the Vikings. I love professional...
I'm a Packer fan.
Well, why?
I'm from Wisconsin.
Well, okay, if you would have told me that at the beginning, we wouldn't have done this interview. So I'm just telling you.
I did go to the University of Minnesota, so...
What? I never knew that.
Go first.
There you go. Okay, how... okay, we'll have to talk about that later.
And then fast food when you're on the road, go to.
I don't do fast food anymore.
So what do you do when you're on the road?
Well, actually, you know what? I would just say if I was going to eat fast food, it would be Taco Bell because that's my favorite. But I haven't had fast food in a long time.
Congrats.
You know what I do is I usually have a bar and an energy drink to get me through the day.
What energy drink is it?
Celsius.
And you have a flavor?
Well, you know what? My favorite right now is the Arctic Vibe.
Okay.
It's a berry blend. It's really good. So.
And then last thing, final thing, this is going to go to all the Maryland activists, Democrats, public. Any message you want to give to the Maryland Democratic establishment and activists? Just anything you want to say.
Thank you. Thank you for believing in this party. Thank you for what you've done already to roll up your sleeves and elect Democrats. You had a great election last year, not just with the election of Senator Angela Brooks, but also Congresswoman April Delaney, other races up and down the ballot that you guys were able to help us secure victories for. You are a model for what can happen around the nation when people are ready to get in this fight, to organize, to roll up their sleeves and do this hard work. Remember, we're not fighting for our candidates. Our candidates, of course, matter in this, and they carry the torch for us, and they give us a sense of how they're going to fight. But ultimately, what elections are about is our hopes and dreams and our values. They're on the ballot every year, and you fought hard in Maryland last year, and you delivered great victories for all of the folks in Maryland. I'm really proud of you. I'm looking forward to working with you. You got a fantastic state party chair led by Ken Ullman and a wonderful state party staff, and I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves. Whenever and wherever they need me to go, I'll be there in Maryland. So keep the faith, keep the hope, keep fighting, and guess what? At the end of the day, we're going to win in 25, 26, 28, and hopefully many years to come. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Ken, thank you for being our inaugural guest on Burn the Talking Points. You're always welcome back in Maryland. We are excited to have you. Folks, stick around for some closeout notes, but thank you for joining us today.